పెట్టేసిన బ్రో.
ఓకే, మ్యూట్లోకి వెళ్ళి. ఓకే, స్క్రీన్ కనబడుతుందా?
Yes.
Okay, so we have created the legal entity in the last class, that is an organization administration. So before proceeding to accounts payable, there's one more important setup that we have to do for legal entity. So if you remember, in the last time we have created Reliance as the legal entity, right?
శ్రీనివాస్, ఒక చిన్న
Yeah.
క్వైరీ. ఇప్పుడు మనము ఇప్పుడు మనం మెన్యూకి వెళ్ళి ఆర్గనైజేషన్ దానికి వెళ్ళి అక్కడ నుంచి లీగల్ ఎంటిటీకి వెళ్తున్నాం కదా. సో డైరెక్ట్గా ఇక్కడ ఎక్కడ సెర్చ్ చేస్తే మనం ఆ లీగల్ ఎంటిటీకి వెళ్ళడానికి అవకాశం ఉందా? ఫైల్స్
అది కూడా ఉంది.
ఓకే,
ఇక్కడ ఉంది కదా. సో ఆ నేమ్ ఏదైతే ఉందో చూడాలి, లీగల్ ఎంటిటీస్ ఉంది కదా. సో డైరెక్ట్ అక్కడికి వచ్చేస్తుంది. ఓకే, ఒక్క నిమిషం. So after creating the legal entity, we'll have to set up a number sequence. We have to generate the number sequences. So number sequence is nothing but Ritesh, mute loki vellu. So number sequence is nothing but a like whenever you record any transactions in any of these, like once you start recording the business transactions, right? Like general ledger account, payable, accounts receivable, for any module it may be fixed assets or anything it may be. You'll have to give one number for a unique number, right? It may be like alphanumeric or anything. For example, if you want to post any journal entry, let's say for account payable related, vendor payment, let us take an example of vendor payment. There are hundreds of transactions or there are multiple transactions. It is not possible for you to remember the transaction. So even though vendor number, all these details will be updated. Along with that, if you have a unique transaction number, or we'll call it as a transaction number or voucher code, all this will be, either all will be considered as the same under number sequences. So you know, see, there are there are two ways to create these number sequences. One is you can give it manually. If you have a limited, or if you wanted to, for example, if there are multiple vendors, if you give a automatic number sequences, whenever you create a new vendor, by default it will take 1, 2, 3, or whatever the format that you have given. If you do not give it as an automated number sequence generated, then there is an alternate way that is called manual. That means whenever you create a new vendor, right, as per your convenient, you can give the number sequence or the vendor account. So I'll just quickly show you how does the number sequence looks like. So here we have created the Reliance as a legal entity, right? So once you create any legal entity, immediately first you have to generate the number sequences. So to create the number sequences, just go to same organization administration. Under number sequences, click on number sequences. Then click on generate. So it will take some time to generate number sequences because for all modules it has to start generating. So let it generate. So in the meanwhile, I'll show you how does it looks in the USMF. For example, okay, let me show you like since we have not generated the number sequences, right? So what we'll go to the same Reliance legal entity. We'll go to accounts payable, all vendors. So we'll try to create a new vendor. So whenever you try to create a new vendor, right? So we have to give a unique number code as I mentioned. That here will that will call it as a vendor account. So if it comes to accounts receivable, it will be a sales account. Sorry, customer account. So here, see now it is not showing anything. That means if once you create these number sequences, right? By default, whatever the format that you have given, according to that format and whatever the instructions or whatever the settings that you have given, let us say if you are giving like 1 to 100 and continuously, so it will take by default it will pick up one number here, and once you create the new wonder account it will take two. So in order to make it automated sequence generation of these number sequences, that we'll have to create it here, but it is taking some time. Or else we'll try to create a new vendor in existing USMF company itself. So we'll start. So before creating this number sequence, in the accounts payable, we'll start with the vendor creation. Then vendor groups. So these both will be in the same setup itself. See, these are the vendors which are already there in this USMF company. So we'll try to create a new vendor here. And the navigation would be this account, go to accounts payable and all vendors, click on all vendors. Yeah. So if you see here, by default it took 26 got generated. That is because of the number sequences they might have they have given in while setting up the legal entity itself. And there are few mandatory fields which you'll have to select. So under this type, there are two under this drop down there are two things. One is a person and organization. If it is something related to organization or company or anything, you can select this organization. If there is any person, then it will prompt you like few other details. Yeah. So if you select a person, the first name, middle name, all these things will be you'll have to enter. So for the timing, we'll select as an organization. We'll give the vendor name as a Wipro here. Search name is nothing but like a nickname or a short name if you have anything. And the group, as I mentioned, for example, in your business there might be a number of a number of products you might be preparing, right? So for such products, you might be getting products from different types of vendors like domestic, international, or else any electronic related, any. If it is a manufacturing company, you for each and every raw material you might be having different vendors, right? So based on that, you can create like domestic, wholesale, or liquidated raw materials. So like this, you can create multiple vendor groups so that it will be easy for you to identify, while creating this vendor under which group he belongs to. And later you can give. So if you want to create a vendor groups under this group field, right? So any field, this is like a standard procedure, or it's if for example, if there is no drop down here, if you see under this type drop down, there are two fields. Two types. One is organization and person. This is something which you cannot change. These are by default, which are already created by the given by the Microsoft Dynamics in the software itself. But if you see here, whenever for few fields, if you want to create or if you want to edit something, just give a right click on this drop down. Can you see here form information, personalized type, view shortcuts? So if you see only these three options are available, that means you cannot edit or you cannot change anything. You have only option to select either of person or organization. But for example, if you give a right click on this drop down, can you see one more option got added, that is view details. Whenever you remember, where if you see this view details, that is nothing but you can create or you can customize. And if you, as we discussed, we'll have to create domestic, wholesale, foreign, or raw material, right? Just give a right click and then click on view details. Yeah. So these are the vendor groups which are already there in this USMF. Adding to that, we'll also give new vendor types here. Even here also, if you see that there is no drop down here, that means you can give whatever the number you want. So continuing to this 50, we'll give it as a 60 here. Terms of payment, time between invoice due date and payment date. All these things we'll discuss in the while creating the payment setup. Say payment, as I mentioned, this terms of payment or this due date, all these are related to due date calculation. Because each and every vendor or every group of vendors might be having different terms of payments, right? If you want to make it or if you want to customize, you can do this. This even if you see here, if I click on this drop down, see these are the types of or the different types of terms of payment, and they have already created as per their requirement. So you can either select any of from these, or if you want to create a new terms of payment, just give a right click. If you see here, view details is here. So if you click on the view details, it will redirect you to the terms of payment field wherein you can start creating the terms of payment. So before going to the terms of payment, we'll just create the vendor groups. Later we'll go to the terms of payment. Next one would be wholesale. And vendors. Yeah. Just click on save. So we'll see what is there in these vendor groups. So for example, yeah. So these you can explore. Just if you want to create the vendor groups, this is a step that you have to follow. So once you click on the vendor groups, so all these details will be shown here. Let me try to refresh. So refresh option is on here. Okay, so it is asking me to select the group field. So yeah, so whatever we have created, right, that will start from domestic, wholesale, foreign. So we'll try to select domestic vendors for this Wipro. Yeah. And if you want to mention any of the details, any of these vendor related details, you can mention all those details. This DUNS number is something related to US vendors or something. ABC code is also not related to us. If you want to give any address or anything known as phonetic name, language, all these things, but these are few mandatory fields. Organization, search name, and this group, everything. So rest of them as per your like whenever you get detail. Okay, so these fields are not mandatory, only these fields are mandatory. So as you mentioned, this 28 is right. So by default it got generated. But if you do not want to see I mean, if you do not want to come this vendor account has a 28, or if you want to make it customized, or if you want to make it as an domestic, or if you want to make it as alphanumeric or anything, as I mentioned. Okay, so there was an error. Company Reliance is already associated with legal entity. Select a different company. We'll see why it is showing as Reliance is already created. Okay, there's only one legal entity, Reliance. Anyways, so this is how it will show the number sequences. Just click on next. Again, click on next. Click on finish. So it will take time. So we'll come back to that later. So as I discussed, like there are few mandatory fields, right? So these fields you have to enter, and rest of them it is like if you have the information you can enter. And let us go to the next one, that is addresses. Yeah. So if you have any address of this particular vendor, you can just click on the ad and give the address. And even there also you can make it as a mandatory or anything. Yeah. And if you have any contact information, contact number of that particular vendor or anything, you can give that. If you want to add any email ID or website of this, you can just click on this drop down, select email ID. If you want to reach out to their support team, or if you have anything else in the description, you can add it over there. What is a primary? You can make it as a primary. Yeah. Even this is also miscellaneous details. Like if you have any, if you want to set, for example, if your organization is following any credit rating for that particular vendors, or if you want to categorize them, you can give it as a credit rating here. Or if you want to set any credit limit, let us say if you are giving does it 10,000, that means still 10,000 worth rupees. You can, I mean, $10,000 worth. You can purchase products from this vendor. Later, it will throw you an error, or it will give you a warning stating that your credit limit has been, exhausted. There you will have to create a, or you can change the limit, or some, or as per your requirement, you can edit that information. So by a group also, it is something where within internal organization, if you have specific groups that are supposed to buy, or all those things, you can create here. So these are not mandatory. These are as per your requirement from the company. Okay. Even these also vendor profile. These are for example, if the vendor is related to any bid only or a one-time supplier, uh, you know locally owned small business woman owner, all these are mostly in the US itself. So if you want to specify vendor related profile, you can mention those details here. Owner is disabled or anything as such. And purchasing demographics, even this also continuation for this contact information itself, like primary contact. I mean, but this is within your company. For example, if you have multiple users in different departments, you can make it as a primary contact. Line of business, employee responsible. If you have multiple employees and if there is any specific employee dealing with any of this particular vendor, you can give that employee name here. Yeah. So if you want to add any notes or anything, you can mention segment, subsegment. All these things are not mandatory. These are all as per the requirement of the company itself. So this is related to invoice and delivery. As I mentioned, if you want to create an invoice account, you see, invoice account is nothing but the the number sequence, whatever I mean, the unique number code that you are going to give for this vendor account. So the same details it will show here as well. Yeah. So here they have created a two different number sequence groups, but it is not necessary. You can just you need not to mention all these details. So most of the times, all these details will be filled by the supply chain management team only, because they will have more information on all these things, like mode of delivery, delivery times, vendor plus tolerance group, all these things. But you can explore all these things one by one. And these details are related to purchase order. For example, while creating the purchase order for this particular vendor, if there are any specific charges that you wanted to highlight, like insurance or any transport freight charges or anything, all those things, if you or if the vendor is sending to particular site, warehouse or anything, all these details you can update here. But if you want to select the site or warehouse, you have to create a warehouse first, and you have to create a site as well. Since this is in this USMF already, they have created the site warehouse, so it will show you in the drop down. For example, yeah, see here, there are multiple sites, and there are multiple warehouses as well. So difference between site and warehouse is nothing but, for site we'll call it as in area. Let us say, for example, if there is in mm, let us say Amazon might be having multiple sites, but in each site they will be having multiple warehouses. So as a whole, as a whole area, we'll call it as a site here. So among that site, they might have multiple warehouses. It's like that. Yeah. So all these details, if the vendor has any particular discount or discount groups, price groups, all these things you can update here. So this information you will get from the vendor itself. I mean, from your customer itself. So the project whichever you're going to work, right? So all these details will be given by them, and most of the details will be updated by SCM team, supply chain management team. So as I mentioned, this terms of payment, method of payment, this we'll discuss. We'll have to configure these terms of payment and method of payment, cash discount, payment schedule, payment specification, all these things, payment days. Yeah. And if vendor has any tax 1099, this is also related to US only. If they have any of these details, you can mention here. You can enable either yes or no. Like, yeah. Even this is related to some currency related setups, wherein, like, if you're dealing with multinational vendors or foreign vendors, you have to create multiple exchange rates, right? Because on daily basis there will be an exchange rate, and exchange rate keep updating. So if you want to make it as a fixed rate, or if you want to give any manual or anything, you can update here. If you're dealing in with any US vendor from India, so on daily basis, $1, dollar exchange rate to the INR will keep changing, like it will be 70, 80 or something like that, right? So if you want to keep it as a fixed on daily basis, irrespective of whatever that is happening globally, you can make it as, you can give now updated information here. Or if you want to make it automated, there is a different setup that we have to give in the currency model. So these financial dimensions, uh, anyways, we'll discuss these financial dimensions separately, but I'll just give an overview. What do you mean by financial dimensions is nothing but, for example, in your company, there are multiple business units, cost centers, departments, item groups, project will be there, right? For if you have business units, that means like if you have multiple branches, like Hyderabad, Chennai, Delhi, Bombay, and all. If you want to specify this particular vendor, or if you want to know any this vendor related to only particular city or anything, you can create multiple such business units, and even cost center as well. Let us say again, if you have multiple departments within organization like HR, sales, marketing, and if you want to record transactions to that particular, or if you want to record transactions linking to that particular department, you can create those departments as well. And the cost centers also, like based on the company requirement, if you have multiple cost center is also nothing but to identify the transactions, or to which if you want to link this transaction to particular cost center, you should create that. Let us see if they have any cost centers here. Can you see here? There are marketing campaign, production, call center. They have a lot of such cost centers here. And if you see business units, home, Tokyo Chemical, they have multiple business units here. they're dealing with home appliances, auto appliances, electronics, sporting, management, consulting. They're into a lot of businesses. So in the same way, if your company is working, or if you want to create multiple business units for your company, you can just create multiple such financial dimensions that we'll discuss in the general ledger module. And then cost center is also same, to make it easy to record any transactions. And the department is also similar to that one only. Sales and marketing, finance, IT department. If you have anything, all these things you can create here. Item group. Even you can create multiple item groups based on your company requirement. Since they are dealing into a lot of such products like audio, car, TV related, service related, you can create project. So if you have any multiple projects, and if you want to link this particular vendor to any particular project, you can mention that. So these financial dimensions will help you to pull the reports. Whenever you pull the report, right? For example, if you want to know the expense of this particular cost center, that is marketing campaign, how much expenses they have incurred for that particular period, or if you want to see the details of this particular vendor who has applied to this marketing campaign. If you do not have these financial dimensions, it will be very difficult for you to identify or to pull the transaction for this particular marketing campaign, right? For that reason, it is always suggested to have a better financial dimensions like business unit. You can classify into multiple things like business units, cost centers, departments, all these things. Yeah, so I believe we have already created the vendor and vendor groups as well. We'll just click on the save. Then we'll quickly go back and see whether I think it is created. I'll quickly go back to the Reliance. We'll see if it has, if the number sequence has been created to this. Yes, it has created here. So, can you? So number sequences has been already created. So let me just quickly show you once again. So once you create a number sequences, again it will not let you to create a number sequences. So remember, this is the important step. Once you create any legal entity, immediately after creating the legal entity, go to organization administration. Here, click on the number sequences. Click on generate. Since we have already created, it will not show you to create once again. Click on the generate, and then it will show you there's an option called next. Click on next 2 times and then click on finish. So by default the number, so you need not to check all these things. These are defaultly created. So number sequences, now it might have created already. Now in order to check whether the number sequence has been created or not, let us quickly go to the accounts payable module. So as I mentioned, in every module there will be parameters. So parameters is nothing but basic configurations, or if you want to give any permissions, like to that particular vendor or particular customer, there will be a lot of such parameters you'll have to consider while recording the transactions. So we'll quickly look into this accounts payable parameters. Yeah, and in remember, in every module, the parameters will be under the setup. We'll go to the accounts payable parameters. Here, if you see, there are multiple fields are there, like general invoice, invoice validation. So under each and every field, under each and every category, there are multiple fields, like wherein you have to select here. So based on this only, it will enable. So if you just now we have created the number sequences, right? So if you want to check, click on this number sequences category. Can you see here? For vendor account, there's a category which have there's a number sequence which is already created by default. And then for one-time supplies 1099. So all these things for by default it has created the number sequence. Now we'll go to the all vendors and we'll see how does this number sequence will help us to create the new vendor account. Okay, it is in USMF. We'll go to the Reliance. Yeah. Now click on new. Okay, can you see here? Earlier we didn't get an option while creating the new vendor, but now if you see, it is showing as a REL 501. Even though I didn't give any this lens vendor account or manually, by default it got created. But if you do not want to this, if you want to customize this one as a any instead of REL like VEN or something, that can be done. So for that purpose, you can just click on the this one. There's a hyperlink here. Okay, sorry, not here. So the moment you generate the number sequences, right, by default it will be created. And if you want to customize, just go to that particular parameters, click on the number sequences. Now we have decided to customize the vendor account number, right? There's a hyperlink. There will be a hyperlink here. Just need to click on this one. Yeah. So it will redirect you to the number sequence page here. So this is a default format that has been created. So based on the number sequences. But as we discussed, we do not want to see the number sequence code for the while creating the new vendor as a Reliance, right? So we'll make it as a VEN. Let me just delete all these things, and I'll show you how to create the number format here. Or I'll will try to create a new number sequence itself. Just click on the new. Vendor account. Just give the number sequence code as per anything, like we'll give it as a vendor ACC and vendor account here. Under the scope, so there are multiple fields like company, legal entity. We'll select it as a company, and then we'll select our Reliance legal entity. So by default, there's an wait, it will show you. Now we'll try to delete this one, and we'll explain you how to customize this one. Just give me 2 minutes, guys. Hello. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes.
Bro, we can.
Okay. So, as I mentioned, if you want to if you want to customize this number format for this particular vendor account, uh, just give the name and then click on scope, select the company name. Under the segments, click on add. For the timing, let us assume that for vendor account, you want to give it as a VEND hyphen 501. So that means it should start from the 5012 and it should continue till this 50. So if you want to achieve this format, or if you want to get this format as a VEND hyphen 501, what are the steps or that we have to do here? So for example, as we'll go one by one. First, it will start with the VEND, right? So if you want to make and remember this VEND hyphen is here, right? So this will be a constant one. That means only these numbers will keep changing, right? So whenever you create a new vendor, and this VEND and hyphen, it will remain constant. So for that purpose, we will consider this VEND hyphen as a constant. So whichever the characters or numbers or anything, if you consider it as a constant, this should go on. These characters will have to update on the constant one. So if you select under this drop down, so before selecting, let me try to click on the add. Yeah. So the moment you click on the add, right? So under this segment field, if you click on the drop down, there are three things. One is alphanumeric, constant, and company. We just saw that there is some, we have decided when the hyphen should be the constant value. Now just click on this constant. I just pasted the when vnd space hyphen space as a constant values. And then what is the next one that you are looking for? 501, right? So remember, in Dynamics 365 or wherever it may be, we will if you want to highlight, or if you want to know, if you want to uh, update numeric numbers as a numbers anywhere it may be, we will use the symbol as a hashtag here to identify. For example, uh, if I update it as a 5 hyphens or 6 hyphens, that means it is 6 digits. We have decided that is triple, sorry, 501. That means total 6 digits. It should be under this vendor format, right? So I will give 6 hash symbols as a value here. So not an alphanumeric value. Yeah. So alphanumeric. So you have to, if you want to give, numbers, just select the alphanumeric, and under this value field, just give 6 hash symbols. Now if you see here, the default format, I mean the based on your suggestions, the format is showing is, it will show here. But what is the format that we have decided? When hyphen should come first, and then the number should be followed, right? But here if you see, numbers, it is showing in the first, and the when hyphen, it is showing in the next. That means this numbers should come in the for after this when hyphen. So for that purpose, you can just click on the move down here. Yes. If you click, or if you want to change it, like if you want to, for example, if there are 3 4 fields that you have updated, and if you want to make it up or down, you can just select this one. So now, as per our format, that is when space hyphen and then 501. So this is a format which we are looking for, right? So this has been created here. When hyphen 5 zeros, sorry, 5 six, total 6 hash symbol is there, right? That means 6 digits will be created. So like this, you can customize the vendor format, or the number sequence format for any module, or for any field. And then reference, this will discuss it later. Anyways, we are not going to use this one. And this is most important thing which you have to remember. For example, once you create this vendor account, and let us say if you are not using, or if you do not want to use this number sequence for the time being, or if you want to keep it on hold for any of your end users, you can just, sorry, now it is in use, so it will not let you this option. Yeah. So it is already in use. So for example, if you do not want to use this number sequence, you can enable this flag as a yes, so that it will be stopped, and you will not create any, it will not let you to create any vendor account. So this one will enable as a no. Yeah. And these are two important fields which you'll have to remember, that is manual and continuous. Manual is nothing but, for example, you do not want to follow this any number format or anything. If you just wanted to give it as a manual, like whenever you create a new vendor, like instead of VEND, if you want to give it as a REL 1234, or domestic or DOM 12, like that. So for that purpose, you can update it as a manual. Or if you want to make it easy, or if you want to, if for example on daily basis, if you are having hundreds of vendors, or if you want to make it as easy whenever you create a new vendor, right? So you'll just, we need to update it as a continuous yes here. So once you click on a continuous yes here, what happens, for example, what is the last digit that we are supposed to get? That is a 6 digit is the last digit, right? That is, what will be the last 6 digit number? That will be 6 nines. So as per our format, wend hyphen followed by 6 hash digits. His hash is nothing but 6 digits. Those 6 digits will end up with a 999 and 999. So post this, you will not be able to create any new vendor. And if you want to make it as a continuous, for example, once you create the new vendor, it will start as a VEND hyphen triple, sorry, 501, and then the last number will be vend hyphen. So for example, I'll just update here. So this will be the starting number, and the last number will be 999. Yeah, 999. So this will be the last vendor account number. So post this, if you try to create, it will throw you an error stating that there is a largest that you are supposed to enter. Yeah. This will be enabled only if you update this flag as a yes here, or if you do not give this as an yes, so it will not it will not create any continuous. So manually it will create. And the allow user changes is nothing but, for example, even though you have given this as a continuous, and if any of your you see, this is some, so once you update it as an yes, so you need not to do any changes, or any of your end users cannot do any changes. Whenever there is an account vendor master team, if they keep on adding the creating the new vendors, by default one by one it will be the vendor account number will be generated. But if you want any specific user to be do changes, or if you want to give permission to any particular user for such manual changes, you can update it. See, can you see here, allow user changes? If you enable this allow user changes, this will to a lower number as yes. Then for example, while creating the vendor account, if the you can less than this 999 and 999, whichever the number he wants, you can select here. Or if you want to give it as a higher number as a yes, then beyond this also he can create. So most of the times we will not give this as an will not enable these options as a yes. The reason being, you do not know which vendor, which user has created, and it will be a confusion. For that reason, we will not enable this option. But if in case, if your customer, or if your client asks, is there any option that we can give permission to specific user, or any of the users to give a lower number or higher number, you can show this as an option. And this automatic, yeah. So once we are done with this general everything, we'll go to this automatic cleanup. So automatic cleanup is nothing but, for example, if you enable this as an yes, let us say you are trying to create this number sequence, or like if you are trying to create a vendor new vendor account, after while creating, let us say you have some system issues, or any for any reason, it may be if your system got stuck, you might end up with crashing that say configuration, right? So or you might end up with not completing the vendor account creation. So at that time, once the once you start resuming, once you resume back to the work, if you try to create the new same vendor or the new vendor, uh, the number sequence code, whatever that was you have got while creating a new vendor account, right? So that will go to the uh, dump, or we can say, we can call it as a like backend, it will be stored. For example, now when I try to click on the new vendor, by default 501 it has been created, right? After entering these 2 3 fields, suddenly my I have logged out from this software. So once I log in back, even though I didn't complete all these details, by default if I click on a new, it will show as a Reliance hyphen 502 instead of 1, because system doesn't know whether you have completed or not. It will just take the new, it will generate a new vendor account number instead of showing it as a 0001 or 501. So for that, again, if you want to retrieve that, or if you want to, for example, even if you try to create a new vendor account with 000 or 501, it will not show you. But if you enable this option, active complete cleanup as an yes, and the interval period as a 24 hours. So every 24 hours, whatever the number sequences that you missed while creating, it will restore it back to the system. And next time when you create, for example, uh, let us assume that there are 5 to 6 members in a vendor master team. Each user is trying to enter vendor details here, like one after one, while entering, like 2 or 3 users got stuck, or their system got closed. So whenever they resume back to the work, right, like there are few vendor accounts numbers, it will not show, but when you pull the report, right, it will show as a 25 vendors, but the number sequence will be somewhere around 35 or 40. But where are those 10 numbers? The reason being, those 10 numbers will be stored in the backend, so those will be released back once this 24 hours interval is completed. So by default, if you apply this as an yes, for example, I'll show you an example. While creating the new vendor, so one of the user is trying to enter this as a, I mean, for him, while creating the new vendor, this is a vendor account which he has updated all the details, and then the other user, when he's trying to create a new vendor, for him it is showing as a 3 instead of 2, because these two, the 2 number might be showing to any other user, and his system got stuck. All right. So whenever he resumes back, right, and if he's trying to create a new vendor, for him it will not show as a 2. By default, it will go to the next number sequence. Then what happened to the number 2? Even if you search with the vend hyphen 502, no, you will not be able to find any details, because with that number sequence there is no vendor has been created. That particular vendor number sequence, it will be restored back to the system after 24 hours. So next day, let us assume all these 5 users started working. So for any of these vendor, they might get this vendor sequence number as a 2. So it will be restored back. So if you enable this option, right, so there won't be any confusion after some days. If you try to pull the report, the number sequence will be in the sequence order. If you do not update this as an yes, right, so whatever the numbers that gone missing, that went missing, uh, you will not be able to find out, and those number sequence, it will be wasted unnecessarily. So for that reason, you should always make this an habit to enable cleanup as an yes here. Yeah. And this performance is nothing but, for example, if you want to create a number sequence for a, or if you want to give in pre-allocation, let us say if you want to give only 100 numbers as for this particular vendor related, you can enable this as, okay. So for that reason, you'll have to remove this as a continuation. So since we have updated this as a continuous, what is the last number here? 999, right? If you do not make it as a continuous, this option will be enabled here. For example, if you want to give only 5 vendors, that means only 5 quantity of numbers. That means vendor hyphen 5 zeros 1 2 3 4 5. So only 5 vendors you can create. And if you give it as a 100, till one when hyphen 000 100 you can create. After that, if you try to create a new vendor, it will throw an error. The reason being, you have activated the pre-allocation. See, the only advantage of giving enabling this pre-allocation is to ensure that, because system remembers that you have already given 100 quantity of numbers, right? So it will it won't take much time to create a new vendor account with the number sequence, but hardly it makes a difference. So it, unless there is a requirement from your company asking that is there any allocation that we can give 100 members, 150 members. Suppose that if you want it to be stopped to creating a new account, you can give this one. But for the time being, we'll not give this as an pre-allocation, and we'll give it as a continuous here. Yeah. So now we have decided that our format, as per our requirement, when hyphen 50, sorry, 6 digit should appear, right? So we'll click on save. Yeah. So now we have created the. So as per the default number sequence, Reliance hyphen 501 got created, but we do not want that one. So we want it to be vendor hyphen, right? So just click on this drop down. Right. Yeah. So this is the one which you have created, right? Vendor account, vendor ACC. Now you can change it as per your requirement and click on save. So we were trying to create a vendor before creating the number sequence. So for the timing, we'll just give it as an Wipro here. I think already there is an Wipro here. We have created groups. Not sure why is it not showing here. Yeah, so we have created vendor groups in USMF. Sorry, we haven't created yet. So we'll create a vendor group here. Like this, you can create multiple vendor groups. We'll refresh and we'll see. For Infosys, we'll give it as a IT vendors. Address is not mandatory. Yeah. So earlier, if you remember, financial dimensions got activated. Since we have not created the financial dimension, that's why it is showing as a not selected. We'll have to create a account structure for that. Now click on save. Okay, field currency, yes. Okay. So we'll have to do the general ledger setup. So then only it will allow us to create the Infosys, vendor account here. But anyways, we'll also. I just wanted to show you the vendor account, right? So this was earlier. Now we'll just quickly go to the. Yeah. So I'll try to create a new vendor here. Same by default. I have just opened the duplicate tab. That is accounts payable, all vendors. Click on all vendors. Now click on new. So this was already created. Yeah. Now can you see the difference? The vendor account is showing as a vend hyphen 501 instead of before we created the number sequence. It was showing as a REL 501. So this is how you can customize the number sequence. So for one-time supplier, for all these things, like you can create a number sequences. Yeah. So I think we have discussed about vendor creation, vendor groups, and number sequences. So tomorrow we'll discuss about the terms of payment. These terms of payment, all these things we'll discuss in USMF. The reason being in Reliance legal entity, if you want to discuss about all those things, first we'll have to configure the general ledger related. So for that reason. So do you have any doubts like till here? How to create a vendor or how to create a number sequences or anything?